Really?
this is where I learned a major lesson, that fitting in is so much different than belonging.
Mm.
And for people out there that have been trying to fit in their whole life, I always say fitting in is molding yourself to be what you believe other people want to be in order to maybe be loved and accepted. Belonging is showing up in complete acceptance as yourself, knowing that that is going to attract the people that love you for who you are.
Mm.
And that is a completely different energy to live in.
Okay, today we have a very special guest here. I have been already getting so excited as we spoke together before we hit record. We have Cody Packer, who currently resides in Austin. He is the host of the Artist Redefined podcast, and his mission behind the podcast is so powerful because he's there empowering you to live beyond definition of an artist, of your own life. And I think that it goes with anyone, even if you don't characterize yourself as an artist. I really do believe that we all are. And as we started to tap into his story, it's something that I know is going to inspire you wherever you're at, or if you can relate to it growing up. But Cody, I'm just so glad that you're here. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for opening up this space. I'm ready to get confidently uncomfortable.
I love it. We're going to see how many times we have to go over that, because it's a tough one to say. Confidently uncomfortable. When we started to talk about this, I've kind of shared with you what it means to me, but when you think about getting confidently uncomfortable, I'd love to hear a little bit more about maybe your story and how you have tapped into that in some way, or how you got to where you are today, because you're inspiring a lot of people in what you do. And typically people that get to that point have a beautiful journey to get there.
Thank you. It has been a long journey to get here, and this is just another step on wherever it's taking me next. So It is all about the journey and not the destination. And my journey so far, I mean, I was blessed to be starting this at around the age of 3. I got gifted a speech impediment when I was younger, which is commonly referred to as a stutter. I still have it now. It's definitely not as noticeable and frequent as it used to be, because weirdly enough, I've just come to accept it, and it doesn't have as much like power over me anymore. But when I was the age of 3 all the way through school, it was this journey of trying to fit in. And what I knew at a young age is that I had this burning desire and a big heart of just like, I wanted to know where my place was. And I was confidently trying to put myself in these places with friends, and I was always met with bullying because of the way that I spoke, whether it be me trying to read aloud in class, or, you know, when the roll call came and I had to say, I mean, like my name, and it would come out Cody, and people would just use that as a opportunity to laugh at me. And so as a young boy, I started to take all this very personally that was happening to me. And the journey through that was about, I went on a path of changing my behavior to try and get love and acceptance and change the external views of me. So this was my journey of learning about the throes of trying to fit in, where it's always at the expense of yourself. Because I realized I started just playing all these roles for different people, and where even I started to befriend the bullies. So what did I do? I tried to bully other people to impress them. And this is a part of me I've come to complete peace with. I mean, this was the best that I knew to do at the time based on the information I had as a young teenager. And so this was part of my journey that led me through a lot of anger and frustration of like, why me? Like, why do I have this thing? I went to talk therapy, art therapy. I can even touch on this very uncomfortable workshop I went to at the age of 12 in Australia, where they were getting me to breathe with belts around my waist. What the goal and the intention was the ethos of the conference was that you have a problem and we are going to breathe it out of you. We're going to like make you be fluent, and we're going to make you something that you're not. And I remember at the time, my body was just like so closed off and convulsing because it felt so unnatural. Like one of the exercises, I had to go out onto the street
Mhm.
and introduce myself to 100 people in a row, speaking like this. Hi, my name is Cody.
Wow.
And like that just killed me inside. Like
Of
I didn't know
course.
what was going on. It felt like so weird. It felt so robotic. It felt so unhuman. But it was a huge part of my learning and my journey. And that was a huge part of the confidently uncomfortable because I
Mhm.
was arguably doing some of the most uncomfortable things I've ever done. And
Mhm.
inside it was like, I didn't believe I had a problem. So there was this conflicting thing where I was being told I have a problem and you're only valuable if you speak fluently.
Mhm.
And then inside of me, but I knew, I hated that I couldn't speak fluently, but I knew it was only natural to me to speak
Yeah.
this fluently.
You're human as you come, as you are. Like, it's not about changing that. And so basically, how old were you at that workshop, by the way? I'm curious.
That was 12.
Okay, that's a pretty, like, formidable age to be having to put yourself out there. I was, like, still afraid to, like, go up to the counter and ask for something and stand up for something from where I was at. So, constantly being told you were a quote unquote problem or that you needed to be fixed, like, how do you feel like that impacted how you viewed yourself? Do you feel like you were always combating that in your mind? But no, like, I feel normal. Like, I know that this is how I'm supposed to talk because it's how I showed up in the world. Or do you feel like you were questioning it constantly?
I felt like there was this big internal battle
Mm.
and it was like a constant war against myself. Like going into my teenage years, it was this frustration where I knew what I wanted to say, but some days it just wouldn't come out
Mm.
the way that I wanted to. So there was this war of like, I want it to be fluent because I don't want to draw the criticism, but I know also that that's unrealistic. And so then, but it was about putting pressure and pressure and pressure on myself.
Hmm.
So it was just this constant like butting heads of deep down wanting the problem to go away because I just didn't want to deal with all the emotions that were coming up. But also, I was then learning to hide those parts of me very strategically by using lots of words like. So, like if anyone spoke to me and I could feel a block coming on or
Hmm.
stutter coming on, I would just stall and I would go, like, so it wouldn't look like I had it just would
Hmm.
look like I was making up my mind.
Hmm.
So there was this like facade going on, and that
Yeah.
was creating the internal battle of just like me not really truly loving myself and being at peace with how I was. So
Mm.
that created a really interesting journey into my later years where I started wanting to make films about it. And I wanted to, because, this is the other thing. When I was a teenager going to talk therapy and all the other different types of stuff, they never once asked me about my emotional being.
Mm.
It was always just what's coming out of your mouth and how is it coming out of your mouth?
Mm.
And they were trying to work out why is this happening to you rather than just asking me how I felt. So it felt quite isolating because
It's
I didn't know.
dehumanizing. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know how to articulate it. And also, but there was half of me that didn't even want to articulate it because I was so frustrated it was even happening to begin with.
Yeah. And to let that be the focus of you, because like you're so much more than that, yet people are dismissing what you have to say just because of how it might come out. And that's no one should ever feel that way. I hate that you did ever feel that way. Feeling ostracized and bullied. I've dealt with bullying in my own way. In no way am I saying that my journey was like yours, but it's a very lonely feeling. And so I just imagining you at 12 years old, already having gone through a decade of this and what that felt like in that place. So with the desire to start doing films on this, was this a passion project where you were already at a point of loving yourself at this point, or were you still dealing with that inner battle or inner war that you talked about, but you felt like you still wanted to use this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was trying to find a way. So this really goes into art. Art is to me an expression of what is in your heart and on your soul. So I was trying to find a way to visualize and express this through which I did not have words for. So it was trying to make sense of what was going on inside of my body through a visual medium so other people could understand. And that's why it was kind of therapeutic to me to make little things on it. The first project I made on it was actually when I moved over to America at the age of 22. And I was, at the time, I was in school studying to be a film director. So I was having to lead teams and I still wasn't quite at peace with it, but I was much more confident in my voice. And that came through school as well. I just want to let people know, like, I did work on my confidence and put myself in uncomfortable things. Like, I would put my hand up to host school assemblies. And it was challenging. Like, again, I was hiding some of my stutter, but I was up there on the stage doing it. I would do all the drama productions because, weirdly enough, when I got on stage, that was my escape, because on the stage, I didn't stutter. When I'm playing a character, my brain thought I was another person. So that was my escape. That was my other world where I could go to and I could just speak freely and kind of be lost. And so I was doing these things that were working on my inner confidence and again, that was just another form of expression to kind of let out things through a character. And then when I made the film in America, that was a way of just trying to make sense of it. But it wasn't until I was 26 that I really came to peace with it.
Really?
And this is where I learned a major lesson, that fitting in is so much different than belonging. And for people out there that have been trying to fit in their whole life, I always say fitting in is molding yourself to be what you believe other people want to be in order to maybe be loved and accepted. Belonging is showing up in complete acceptance as yourself, knowing that that is going to attract the people that love you for who you are. And that is a completely different energy to live in.
Absolutely.
And so I found my belonging after two major events happened to me. I was working at a commercial agency in Chicago, married at the time. Within 2 days, I lost my job and me and my wife decided to divorce. This was a huge awakening and opening for me. This was the uncomfortable part where I was asked to be confident through the dark night of the soul. I spent a good 2-3 months crying, just letting myself peel and grieve, basically, this old life. And then I got a calling to go and work at a camp for young kids who stutter, which is what I'd always wanted to do. So I volunteered. I went out there and I was really scared. This was if you're talking about confidently uncomfortable, like, this was a environment that the last time I went into a group like this was I got belts put around me and I got put into a street. So I really did not know what on earth was going to happen. I showed up there and the ethos of this Camp Say, was just the most beautiful, heart-opening, warming, welcoming space ever, where I was hearing things like they were giving kids as much time as they needed to speak and people would just stand there and wait. They had art programs where kids could express their anger and emotions and frustration and whatever it was, and it was all allowed. There was a vehicle and spaces for it to be expressed, and it was acknowledged and it was heard. And then I was able to do that through working with the kids. And on the last night of that camp, I was by the lake and we were putting these light lanterns out over the lake that we'd written memories on, and they were floating on the lake. And I was one of the last people awake. And I had this experience where my body kind of shrunk into that of like an 8-year-old. And then this little boy walked up next to me, and it was me at the age of about 5. And he just grabbed my hand, and this was a complete like visual experience, and grabbed my hand, and he just said to me, "Cody, you don't need to be scared anymore. It's time you just use your voice." And that was where, I cried for probably like 30 minutes and just let all that shame and the embarrassment out. And I just came to peace with myself. And that was when it all kind of switched, when I just allowed myself to be in that discomfort that I have spent a long time in my life being at war with myself and not connected to who I really am.
So powerful. I'm trying not to like get emotional, but also if it comes out, it comes out. But
Yeah.
you know, that camp, like those kids there, they needed you, but you needed them as much as they needed you. And what a healing experience that was. You kind of mentioned a couple things I want to come back to, and just this whole experience with your healing was like you had to go through a really low time, and you also had to go through grief in order to create space for what was coming. And sometimes we're holding on to something and we're not releasing that. The other thing that I think was a huge lesson that some people still struggle with is we think we need to be, like you said, accepted and fit in. And in order to do that, we need to basically perfectly mold ourselves into this cookie cutter formation of what we think we should be. And all that does is cuts away parts of who you are. And it can leave you feeling so empty. And so the fact that you were able to come back to yourself and see that through the eyes of a child is just such a powerful experience and so beautiful. And I love that you were able to have that. With your experience, there were two things you talked about. You talked about how you were kind of, I'm going to use the word forced, but you were forced into doing this workshop where you had to do these activities that were very uncomfortable for you. Not necessarily the most, I think, not necessarily the best thing, but it seems like you still found a lesson from there. And then to the point where after you were still volunteering to speak and putting yourself out there, did you see the value in getting uncomfortable at least, and then maybe want to do it on your own terms? Like, what do you feel like transition there? Because you could have very easily seen that and done the exact opposite, where I'm never going to put myself in that position again because it was so uncomfortable. And it should not have happened to you as a kid, but it did. So talk to me a little bit about that process that was going on within you that helped you continue to show up.
Yeah, I think the key for me, that's a great question, because when we're running from discomfort, we're running from ourselves. We're running from the possibility that we can be on the other side. I mean, there is great treasure to be found on the other side of discomfort. It is just, but it's our mind that takes us away from it. Our body has no clue like what it is. Sure, there may be a stored emotion around some uncomfortable time, but it is more the mind's stories around what it could be than like the body can really do anything. So after I came back from that experience, that workshop, I think what I really learned was it's about safety. I didn't feel safe at that workshop. I didn't feel seen or heard or acknowledged or valued. It was just a militant framework that I had to abide by. When I came back and I started to put myself in other spaces, I did so in spaces that I knew that I felt internally safe in. That didn't mean it was easy, but it just means that when you're going through discomfort, there is always an element of wanting to be in control. Now, at that conference, there was no control. I was being told what to do. When I put myself in those environments like school assemblies and on the stage, that's what I call voluntary discomfort.
I like it.
And that is where you are in power, in your own, you are rooted in like what is the best for you. And I would say that it is those arenas where you can really, really thrive. I mean, I still do it to this day, like with all sorts of different stuff in my life. And there is actually a process in this stuttering world where you actually go out and you try to stutter in front of people. So you desensitize yourself to caring what other people, how they respond. This is also done with training speech language pathologists. If they want to experience what it's like, they go out and pretend they have a stutter so they can learn what it's like. And I mean, I still have there's a little bit of a kind of a problem with that, I think, because
Mm.
They can detach from the emotions of it. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's the idea. But I think voluntary discomfort is about choosing a place where you feel like there's still an edge, but you know there's an element of safety there. And I think that's where like real magic can happen.
Oh, absolutely. That is literally what I teach on. So I'm so glad we got into this. Like, that is where it's at. It's about getting uncomfortable, but that doesn't mean putting yourself in an unsafe situation. It means allowing yourself space to grow. Maybe it's something that in that moment, it's a little bit hard, a little bit difficult, a little bit outside of what you would normally do, but ultimately it's going to help you grow. And I think that's such a powerful lesson because you mentioned with going out in public and putting yourself out there, raising your hand at events as a kid and still doing that. Do you feel like that lesson has really seeped into other things with your art, with everything that you're doing as far as putting yourself out there and getting uncomfortable? What other ways are you challenging yourself?
Yeah, that's a really solid question. I guess if we're speaking about presently, what I'm really playing with right now is that for the longest time I've been a cardio person.
Mhm.
I've only done lots of sports, and anything at the gym was always cardio based stuff. So I have always had a resistance around lifting weights and what that would mean about me. So I just found some friends that I really trusted. And I've been going to the gym 3 times a week, put myself in a powerful, men's group here in Austin called the Empowered Brotherhood, and put myself in environments around powerful, strong, healthy, masculine men
Mm.
where I can actually embrace that part of me and actually like really step into being seen around other men when I'm not as muscly or can't lift as much. And that
Mhm.
has been really uncomfortable for how I view myself, but also humbling my ego to just be okay with where I'm at and soak in the discomfort. Another way recently is just owning myself on a podcast,
Mm.
like releasing the Artist Redefined podcast. I had a extreme period of where I went through, kind of perfectionism, and I still, even recording some of the stuff for the trailers and stuff, there was this, this, it's brought up a lot of the
Oh,
last of
yeah.
the perfectionism of wanting things to be like perfect. And especially with the speaking thing is just being okay with like stuttering when I'm doing an episode and not wanting to cut it out. Like this is part of,
Yep.
and what a gift. Like there's no other podcast out there with a host that speaks like me. Cool.
Powerful.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Like, let's go. Like, why would I like cut that out and hide that?
Mm-mm.
So that's been really about owning my confidence and not wanting to beat myself up for the tiny things and really actually soak in all the beautiful things that I'm really proud of.
Mm,
Because
that is so beautiful.
a lot of the times the stuff that is, like the negative, actually, you know what? This is a really interesting story. I
Mhm.
was working with someone recently. This is one of my like one-on-one clients, and I won't use her name, but this is a great story I feel like people will relate to. She was telling me, she was like, "Oh, I had a really bad comment about my, like what I made for a person the other day, what I designed for them." And I said to her, "Oh, okay. Um, you know, can you be okay with that?" And she was like, "Well, I guess I can." Then she went in this big spiral of how it's always that way and this, and she was telling me like, "Oh, it's been impacting all my other work. Like when I get over my tools now, I'm scared that I'm going to make that mistake again." And I
Mm.
said, "Well, what happened after the lady brought up her thing? Did you resolve it?" She was like, "Yes, I did." I said, "Okay." I said, "I'm feeling some really heavy energy around this." And I said, "I've got to ask you, how many other mistakes have you made? Has this been like a consistent thing?" And she said, "Oh." And I said, "Well, no, tell me, like, how many mistakes have you made over the 3 or 4 years of you making these outfits?" And she said, "Well, I guess only two that people have complained about." And I said, "Okay. And how many pieces have you made where you've made people cry or they've been like, 'Wow, thank you so
Mhm.
much'?" And she was like, "Oh, probably over like 200." And I said, "The energy that you have is that you've disappointed 200 people and you've only impressed two people." And I said, "Do you see the weight of like how we can just beat ourselves up?"
Yeah.
And I just said, "Just let yourself be in this discomfort. It's okay. Trust yourself and you made it right." And it's just like, I feel like the negative amplifications we can make can be just so and they're always out of proportion.
We hold so much weight to it. Exactly. We hold so much weight to it, especially with ourselves. Whereas, like, when we're seeing it other people, we let it slide. I haven't thought twice about it as we're talking together. I'm just like, this is such a good episode, is all that keeps going through my head. And I just think that's such a testament to, we shouldn't hold back from what's inside of us that we want to let out for fear of it being quote unquote wrong, unliked, or imperfect, because it's all about feeling aligned with yourself. Like, you're no longer cutting out parts of yourself, like metaphorically and physically on your podcast episodes. And that is so important, because you, that 8-year-old boy who came to you and said that, didn't want to see you cut out parts of yourself anymore. And so that's such a beautiful thing. So every time you refuse to cut out that space or correct yourself or even apologize if that ever comes up, because I know I'm super into apologizing. I had to break up with that a long time ago. But, what a beautiful thing that, like, you are doing that for them. That's something that really helps me. I'm not sure if that ever helps you, with just picturing my younger self and like, would I speak this mean and negative and just toxic towards them? Be like, you suck. Like, you're not perfect. You messed up again. How dare you? Like, do you feel like that was ever a healing situation for you when you came back from camp?
Oh, yeah. After the camp, I got into 2-3 years straight inner child work, and we really bonded. And I bring a lot of inner child work into my one-on-one spaces and group spaces, because I think it's like the bedrock of just a lot of things that go back to the age when we were just sponges for things. We personalized a lot of things through no fault of our own. And that little boy or little girl was just trying to make sense of something with the limited resources that they had at the time.
Yep.
And it's so beautiful to get to rekindle that relationship with him. And I think what he taught me on that night was that I would rather be hated for who I am than loved for who I'm not. And that, I think, is the thing that I've carried forward, is like, it's my privilege to be myself. And there is, for anyone out there listening, there is only one of you on this planet. And there is this pressure from society, from media, from every angle, to be something to appease others and not cause conflict and not cause this and not cause that. And it's what I'm calling the removal of self-power, essentially. Because why would we be wanting to remove conflict or discomfort from people's lives when clearly this is the space where everyone grows in, whether they like it or not? So it's like, the way I look at it is, even if I trigger someone and I have to hold space for that and they're not seen eye to eye, the way I always internalize it is, I'm giving them the opportunity to learn. And I'm giving myself the opportunity to learn. Because even if they're triggered and they don't get anything from whatever happened, it's still opening up an awareness.
Yep. Oh, that's crazy you said that. I literally have written down in my notebook, which that's always me taking notes, but I wrote down triggered versus healing. You could have been triggered, like, and I'm sure things did come up when you were at this camp, when you were seeing these kids that were similar to you growing up as a kid. But for you to be able to see it, things do bubble up. And instead of being like, I'm triggered, I'm going to go back in my shell, seeing it as a healing opportunity, I truly feel like that's how the world will heal. If we start to recognize when that discomfort comes up in us, or that quote unquote triggering comes up for us, ask why, and then come from it from a place of like love versus putting yourself down or going against the other person that's triggering you. Because it really is, we got to come back to ourselves with that. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's definitely something that
wholeheartedly
I've noticed.
I totally, I'm so glad you spoke into that, because triggers are opportunity to learn more deeply about what wants love and attention in ourselves. And if we approach it like that, the way I guide, and the way I guide myself as well, is I actually look at triggers or emotions. I look at emotions as a whole, as if it was a little kid. For example, when I'm feeling upset about something, like, oh, maybe I haven't been included and the story comes up how I'm always like left out. What I do is I actually look at that emotion in my body, I breathe into it and I let it be. And then what I do is I actually look at it as if it was a little kid. And so I visualize it. Everyone can relate to this because everyone had, I'm sure, that little kid in their class that would be in the corner, that would be shy, and that would want to, like, deep down, he wants to be a part of the rest of the group, but he's either too shy or he just doesn't know his place. Because that was also me at points, right? So I view my emotions like that. Now, if we push that kid away, what is he going to do? He's going to get more upset. He's going to probably get loud. He's going to play up. But what if we just ask him to come over to the group and we just give him a hug and tell him that he's welcome? Then all of a sudden that emotion feels heard, it feels seen, and then it's not so much of a big deal because it can play with all the other emotions in your body and it's not being neglected.
I love that visual.
Yeah. And it's very simple. Honestly, just try it, anyone out there listening, because it really takes the kind of, meaning out of like, oh, there's something wrong with me if I'm upset. I was meant to be having a good day. It was like, well, no, maybe it's just that part of you that just needs an extra hug so you can feel more whole.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's like the parts work of that is just seeing yourself. And instead of trying to think of yourself as like, oh, this is a bad emotion or this shouldn't be coming up for me or I've already dealt with this before. Why is this coming up again? Instead, just viewing it as like your inner child, like, hey, this is how I'm feeling right now. And taking that, I don't know, I've learned a little bit more about like IFS, internal family systems, and how it breaks that down. And that's really what I'm hearing here. I think that was really helpful for me in my own like healing journey, was being able to view it in that way and break up with thinking that I had to hide that part of me or that was bad. And when it did come up, even in new ways, because I don't know if you noticed this in your own journey, but as I continue to level up, because I believe that I want to continue to get uncomfortable in order to grow, but it seemed like every single stage that I'm doing that, a lot of those things come back in. And I used to get so angry and be like, oh, we dealt with this already. Why is this coming up again? And now I see it as like, well, this is a new vantage point. You're going from a new vantage point and there's new growth to be had here. Have you noticed that in your own life as you've gone through this and kind of grown in your speech and with everything?
Yeah, I mean, stuff always comes up. Our body has an amazing, it's the most amazing technology on the planet. The more we try to outsmart it, the more it just always surprises me. And it's just like, you can't, just don't even try. So I think for me, when stuff has come up that I thought, oh, wait, I think I've moved past that, I think what it is actually doing is it's asking me to even embrace it from like a deeper point. Maybe I just embraced a part of it, but there's like a shadow part of it that still just needs like a really look in the eye to it. Because what I do believe is that whatever presents itself is always because you're not free from it. You wouldn't get presented something if you were free from it.
Yep, agreed.
Just like if a person calls you an asshole, if you take offense to it and react and climb down, it's got nothing to do with the other person. It's got everything to do with that you still believe on some level you're an asshole.
Yep.
Or you just view yourself in a negative light. So it's just like, take the self-responsibility and just bring love to that part of yourself for whatever reason it still exists. No big deal. Don't do a big song and dance about it. But yeah.
Exactly. Choose to be a trigger or a healing moment for you. And I think that that's really so powerful. I've been so inspired by your story. I really appreciate you just sharing, all of you, honestly, and not holding back. That means so much to me. And I know my audience as well. I would love to kind of close out with just some more fun stuff, a little lighthearted. I call them my like rapid fire questions. So I'm going to ask you the question. You're going to respond as quickly as possible and we'll kind of go from there. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right, sweet. So first question, I'm trying to switch these up a little bit, but these ones I'm sticking to for the next few weeks. What is the last Netflix series or whatever, something that you watched that you like binge through the whole thing? It could be documentary, it could be just binge TV, whatever. You could tell me you don't watch TV and that's fine. I'll try and believe you, but I want to know.
I only watch a few TV shows.
Okay, give me something. What's something you would throw out there that you're like, I could watch this for sure?
There's a show nobody knows about called The Leftovers on HBO.
Okay.
It's one of their older shows. It is one of the best TV shows I've ever seen with Breaking Bad. To me, it's
Love
got,
Breaking Bad.
yeah, it's got it all. It's mystery, it's got drama, it's got romance, but it's basically about speaking. This is actually kind of related to your show. The plot of the show essentially is one day on Earth, there's a rapture and hundreds of thousands of people mysteriously disappear. No reason at all. And people are trying to grieve and they're trying to make sense of it. And it's basically about how humans are terrified of the unknown. They want answers. And it's just this journey of different characters trying to find their answers and find their internal peace and closure within this terrifying stuff that's happened.
Oh.
And yeah, it's there's a lot of
all right. It's on my list. It's on my list. I love it.
It's quite heavy though.
That's okay. We'll take it in. So maybe not a bingeable. So we might not watch it all in one, like to digest it first, guys. Okay. The next thing, I'm curious because I studied abroad in Australia and Sydney, and I went to New Zealand and absolutely loved it. I don't know if I mentioned it. It was before we hit record, but Cody is from New Zealand. So what's something, if you were like the spokesperson for New Zealand, what is something you would tell someone about the place?
Oh, well, you've just got to go there.
I agree. Everyone needs to go there. It's amazing.
The one thing that just never fails to blow my mind away is just the range of landscapes and the absolute beauty of them. If you get to some of the isolated places, it is like you're on a part of the planet that feels like it's untouched.
It's gorgeous. I mean, I thought I knew mountains, and then I went to New Zealand.
Yeah.
Whole other program. I love it. I definitely want to bring my husband back there. It is gorgeous. So I had to ask you, where were you born? Where are you from in New Zealand?
I'm born in Wellington.
Okay.
But my last stint there was living in Queenstown in the mountains.
Okay, good. I know Queenstown. That's awesome. Yeah. All right. And then other weird question. What was I don't know if you had AOL or like screen names growing up, but me as a kid, I want to know, what was your AOL screen name as a kid? Please let it be super embarrassing.
Mine was an MSN screen. It was my Hotmail.
Yep.
It was _Packinator. So it was like the Terminator, but I changed it to my last name.
Okay, you should have told me that earlier, so I could have referred to you as the Packinator the rest of the
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so good. I love it. Okay, and then finally, the podcast, as we kind of spoke throughout, Confidently Uncomfortable. It's all about getting uncomfortable. And I would love for you to share, like, what is something that you're doing in your life that is a big stretch goal for you, or something that you're really excited about. It could be in your business and your life, a little bit of both, whatever you got.
Oh, that's a really good question. Healing the planet and bringing people back home to the power that they are, so they can realize they don't have to rely on governments, healthcare systems, and other people to live a fruitful, like, incredible life.
So everything we need is within us. I love it. Beautiful. What a great mission. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I appreciate sharing. I know you're also hosting something exciting in Austin. So guys, definitely go ahead and follow on Cody Packer's Instagram. Where else are you at? You have your podcast. So Artist Redefined Podcast. How long have you been doing the podcast?
The podcast has been 3 months into it. We've got about 20 episodes. So
I'm
it's
obsessed.
It's flying. Yeah. For anyone that doesn't know, it's a podcast empowering you to be the artist of your own life. So we're interviewing guests about their magic all around the world to do with untraditional art tools. It's about redefining what an artist is. Like, I believe we're all creators. We're all artists at our core. Like, we create in every moment of our life with our thoughts. Everything we do creates our reality. So it's just interviewing people that are doing things differently and leading. It's just going to help people have resources on a day-to-day basis to play with and get creative with, and also just help you remember your power. Like, these people I'm speaking to are all just helping lead people all over the world back to their power, whether it's through their breath, through their communication, their relationships, their intimacy, their inner child, all sorts of different modalities that you wouldn't consider quote unquote art. That is what this podcast is about. So it's a playground to learn and remember.
I've already enjoyed a lot of the episodes, and I'm looking forward to being on the podcast as well. It's just really, really a great mission behind it. And I think all of us need to tap into that more. in order to come back to our inner child. Like, we all are artists. And if we start to focus on that, I think it's just so valuable. So I am so grateful that you just were able to give us some of your time today. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you sharing your story. I know that more people are going to hear it, not only in this podcast, but worldwide. I'm like so looking forward to your story continuing to be told around the world. Thank you for being here, Cody.
Thank you for creating the space for voices like mine and others to just be able to have a home.
Absolutely. I appreciate you.